You are standing in the plumbing aisle of the hardware store. It is a Saturday morning. You are looking at a shelf full of small cardboard boxes and plastic jugs. Every box has a picture of a toilet on it, or maybe a patch of perfectly green lawn. They are making a heavy promise to you. They are promising to save you from a $10,000 septic system repair. They are promising that if you buy this box, you will never wake up to the smell of raw sewage standing in your backyard. You know the smell, I mean. It is sour and thick, and it ruins a summer evening the second the wind shifts. You pick up a box. It costs about $18. You put it in your cart. You buy it month after month, year after year, because you are afraid of what will happen to your home and your bank account if you do not. Now I want you to sit with this. That expensive box you just bought is mostly freeze-dried enzymes and cheap fillers. The companies making those boxes are taking basic biology and selling it back to you at a massive markup. The government people at the EPA put out guidance on this. They showed that these commercial septic additives are marked up by as much as 1,000% for retail sale. You are paying for a cardboard box and a fear of the backhoe tearing up your yard. For $3, using basic baking ingredients right from your kitchen, you can feed the living engine buried out in your grass. You can keep your pipes flowing forever without paying a monthly tax. And it works. My name is Levi Stoltzfus. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Today, we are going to talk about the concrete tank buried out under your yard. I will be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am. This $3 trick will keep a healthy tank running perfectly, but it will not dissolve a thick oak root that has already crushed your drain field, and it will not save you from having to pump the tank every few years. But honest is better than impressive. If you follow this, you will never buy a commercial septic packet again. The English pour bleach down their drains and then wonder why their yards smell like sewage in the summer. But why do the big cleaning companies actually want you to ruin the bacteria in your tank? We will look at that later. Last spring, my neighbor David was standing out by his property line looking miserable. He is a good man, an English fellow who works at the bank in town. He was holding a receipt from the home supply store and shaking his head. His wife had noticed the toilets gurgling that morning. He was terrified. He told me he had just spent his morning buying a 6-month supply of commercial septic treatments. He handed me one of the boxes to show me what he was up against. I looked at the ingredients listed on the back. It listed things like amylase and protease. Well, I don't know the chemistry name for every single strain in there. I know what it does. Those are just natural enzymes. They are biological workers that break down starches and proteins. The commercial companies just freeze-dry them, mix them with sawdust or bran, and put them in a shiny box. I told David he was paying roughly $15 to $20 a month for that box. If you do the math on that, it is over $180 a year. Over a 10-year span, you are handing almost $2,000 to a chemical company just for peace of mind. I handed the box back to him. I told him the traditional farm method we use costs roughly $3, and we only have to do it every few months. He did not believe me at first. He opened the box and showed me the brown powder inside. He thought because it came with a barcode and a plastic seal, it must hold some kind of modern chemical power that a farmer could not recreate. I had to explain it to him slowly. To stop paying that monthly tax, we have to understand what is actually living under your lawn. Because it is not just a dead holding tank holding dirty water. It is a living stomach. And right now, most folks are starving it while they let me back up. We need to look at what is happening inside that concrete box. A standard residential tank holds about 1,000 gallons. It is buried deep enough to keep from freezing. It is completely dark, and it has no fresh air. The university extension people who study soil and water science call it an anaerobic system. That just means it is an oxygen-deprived environment. Inside that 1,000-gallon tank, a heavy biological engine is working day and night. We call it a biomat. You can picture it like a living, chewing stomach. It is a thick, active crust of bacteria that lives right at the layer where the liquid meets the drain field. Every time you flush a toilet or let your dishwater drain, organic waste, starches, and proteins flow out into that tank. The bacteria in the biomat wake up and eat. They break down the heavy solids into a clear effluent liquid that can safely absorb into the dirt. If the biomat is healthy and hungry, it processes the household waste as fast as it comes in. The system is balanced, but before we can feed that stomach, we have to stop poisoning it. This is where David was going wrong, and it is where most folks make their mistake without ever meaning to. We spend so much time trying to keep the inside of our homes perfectly white and sterile. We scrub our showers and our kitchen sinks with ordinary household bleach. Bleach is sodium hypochlorite. It is a broad-spectrum biocide. Its entire purpose on this earth is to hunt down and kill biological life. The engineers who study wastewater data have measured exactly what happens when that white jug gets poured in the sink. If you pour just one single cup of concentrated bleach down your drain, you will decimate the bacterial colony in your septic tank for up to 60 hours. 1 cup. Think about that. For 2.5 days, nothing in the yard breaks down. The biomat is stripped bare. The natural decomposition entirely halts. Every flush, every shower, every plate scraped into the sink just stacks up in the dark. It just sits there, waiting for the bacteria to slowly rebuild their numbers. By the time the colony finally recovers, Sunday comes around, folks do their heavy weekend cleaning, and they pour another cup of bleach down the drain. They kill it all over again. And it is not just the heavy bleach, it is the laundry room. David's wife likes to use that thick blue liquid fabric softener. Most people do. They want their heavy winter clothes to come out of the dryer smelling like a mountain spring. But you have to look at what makes that thick liquid work. It is full of quaternary ammonium compounds. The English shorten that name and call them quats. These compounds are highly antibacterial. When the washing machine drains, all of those quats flow straight out the pipe. Environmental science reports show exactly what happens when it hits the tank. That slimy liquid coats the biomat. It forms a chemical barrier right over the living bacteria. It suffocates the living engine in the tank. The bacteria cannot breathe, and they cannot eat. Because of that suffocation, the solids build up rapidly. David was buying a $20 box of freeze-dried enzymes on Saturday morning to try and fix the terrible damage his washing machine did on Friday afternoon. It is a losing battle. You cannot buy enough cardboard boxes to outrun a gallon of bleach. Once you stop pouring the poison down the pipes, you can actually introduce a cure that works. You can let the biomat heal, but before we get to the kitchen and mix up our $3 solution, we must clear up a dangerous myth first. It is a lie that the commercial companies let people believe, and it will end up ruining your property if you fall for it. There is a hard truth about the dirt in your tank that you need to face. People want to believe that if they just pour a magic powder down the toilet every month, their waste will completely vanish. They think the tank will run for 40 years, and they will never have to pay a man with a vacuum truck to pump it out. David believed this. He told me the man at the hardware store said the $20 box dissolved everything, every single solid. It is a myth. The EPA puts out a homeowner's guide to septic systems that explains this plainly, Ted. Organic waste breaks down, but inorganic sludge does not. Think about the heavy dirt from your garden boots that washes down the shower drain. Think about the fine grit from scrubbing a cast iron pan or the tiny synthetic fibers that pull loose from modern clothing in the laundry. None of that dissolves. There is no enzyme on earth that eats nylon and sand. That heavy inorganic matter sinks straight to the dark bottom of your concrete tank. It permanently settles there as a thick layer of sludge. It will never break down. If you do not hire a truck to pump the tank every 3 to 5 years, that heavy sludge just piles higher and higher inside the concrete box. Eventually, it reaches the outlet pipe, That thick black mud overflows straight into your drain field. It plugs the gravel and the soil. It ruins the drainage entirely. And then you are digging up your yard with a backhoe and writing a check for $10,000. You must pump the tank. No powder changes that reality. Once you accept that you have to pump out the hard dirt every few years, you realize your only real job between pumpings is keeping the living biomat healthy so it can handle the daily organic waste. You just need to keep the bacteria fed and hungry. If you want to keep track of this exact recipe so you do not have to buy the expensive boxes ever again, there is a guide down in the description that you can print out and keep by your sink. Now, I want you to go into your kitchen, open your pantry. We are going to build the biological boost. You only need 4 simple things. You need active dried baker's yeast, 2 standard little packets, the kind my wife uses to bake a loaf of bread. If you buy it from the dry goods store in town, 2 packets cost about $1.50. Then you need half a cup of yellow cornmeal. Use the plain, coarse ground kind. You want it to feel rough in your hand. Half a cup costs about 50 cents. You need a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. You can pack it down just a little bit in the measuring cup. That is about $1 worth of sugar. And you need 2 cups of lukewarm water. Not boiling hot, just warm to the touch. From the tap or the well, it does not matter. The water is free. You add that up, and your total cost is exactly $3. Waste nothing. That is what we teach our children, and it applies to the money in your pocket, just as much as the harvest in the field. There is no sense in paying for a shiny cardboard box when the ingredients sitting in your cupboards hold the exact same power. You have your materials sitting on the counter, the yeast, the cornmeal, the sugar, and the warm water. I will show you exactly what time of night. You must do this in just a minute. You need a glass bowl and a wooden spoon. We start with the warm water. You pour the 2 cups of warm water into the glass bowl, and then you tear open the 2 packets of baker's yeast. You sprinkle the dry yeast right across the top of the water. Then you sprinkle the 1/4 cup of brown sugar right over it. You stir it gently with the wooden spoon just until the sugar starts to melt into the warm water. Then you step back and you leave it alone. You have to let it wake up. You wait about 15 minutes. You will see the surface of the water start to turn cloudy. Then it will get thick. A pale, creamy foam will rise up the sides of the glass bowl. You know the smell I mean. It is that rich, sour smell of fresh bread dough starting to rise on the kitchen counter. That foam is the biological engine turning over. The microbiology books call this specific baker's yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae. When it ferments like this in warm sugar water, it naturally produces enzymes. Specifically, it creates protease and amylase. Those are the exact biological catalysts sold in those expensive commercial treatments. They are the chemical workers that break down the heavy proteins and the thick starches floating in your tank. You do not need a factory to make them. You are growing them right now in a glass bowl. Once the yeast has a good thick head of foam on it, you take your half cup of yellow cornmeal. You dump it straight in and stir it up. Now, you might wonder why we are adding coarse ground corn to a plumbing pipe. It feels like making mud, but the agriculture men who study composting and biofermentation understand exactly why we do this. The yellow cornmeal acts as a slow-release complex carbohydrate matrix. The yeast and the natural bacteria in your tank need a structural food source. They need something physical to hold on to while they multiply in the dark. When you flush this heavy liquid down, the cornmeal does not just wash away, it gives the bacteria that structure. It helps them quickly establish a robust, hungry colony right on top of the biomat. You have your mixture ready. It looks like a messy, pale yellow soup. Now we talk about the application. I promise to tell you what time of night you must do this. You wait until the very end of the day. You wait until the heavy dinner dishes are scrubbed, the laundry machine is shut off, and the children have brushed their teeth. The house needs to be perfectly quiet. You want to apply this right before you go to bed, when absolutely no more water will be run for the entire night. If you run the shower, right after you pour this, the clean water will flush the yeast straight through the tank before it has a chance to settle. You want the tank sitting perfectly still. You take the glass bowl to a downstairs toilet. You pour the whole mixture right into the bowl, and you flush it exactly one time. Then you wash your hands, turn out the lights, and go to sleep. I'll say 40 words. Stay with me on this next part. I need you to hear this clearly, because a mistake out in the yard is not something you just walk away from. You apply this mixture by flushing it down an indoor toilet. You never, under any circumstances, take a crowbar out into the yard and pry the heavy concrete lid off your septic tank to pour it directly inside. When organic waste breaks down in a buried tank, it produces a byproduct called hydrogen sulfide gas. The chemical men write it as $H_2 Singapore dollars. This gas is heavier than air. It does not drift away on the breeze. It sits right under that concrete lid in a thick, invisible cloud, pooling just above the black water. The men at OSHA who write the confined space hazard data will tell you the absolute truth about hydrogen sulfide. It is highly toxic. It can be instantly fatal if inhaled. If you pry that lid back, lean your head over the open hole to pour your bowl of yeast, and take a breath of that gas, your lungs can shut down before you can even stand back up. A man gets dizzy. He falls forward right into the tank, and the story ends there. It is a terrible way to leave your family. We do not play games with the tank lid. You leave the heavy concrete buried in the dirt. You let the man with the vacuum truck open it when it is time to do the hard pumping. Your job stops at the bathroom toilet. If you apply this simple yeast mixture safely indoors every 3 or 4 months, you are doing everything a homeowner can do to keep the biology strong. But there are lines this trick cannot cross. Let me tell you exactly what those limits are. This biological boost works best if you apply it every 3 or 4 months. That keeps a steady, strong colony alive. But if your home is connected to the city sewer line, this recipe will do absolutely nothing for you. Those pipes carry everything miles away to a massive municipal plant. There is no tank in your yard holding the waste. Your yeast just washes straight down the line. You are just feeding the city's concrete vats and throwing your $3 away. And you have to look at the physical ground out in your yard. Sometimes a man walks out past his clothesline in the middle of summer and sees a patch of grass that is growing a little too tall, a little too dark green. Then the ground gets spongy under his boots. A week later there is standing black water right on top of the soil, smelling like sulfur. If your leach field is flooded and saturated like that, a biological enzyme cannot save you. A bowl of warm yeast cannot fix a mechanical plumbing failure. Maybe you listened to the hardware store man and went 10 years without pumping the tank. The heavy inorganic sludge, the dirt and the synthetic fibers finally reached the top of the water and pushed out into the perforated pipes. It plugs the gravel trench solid. Or maybe an old silver maple tree sent a thick root right through the side of your plastic drain line, searching for water in the middle of a dry August. I have seen tree roots thick as a man's forearm pull a leach pipe entirely apart. When the physical structure breaks, you cannot pour a powder on it to fix it. You must call a man with a heavy excavator. He has to bring a diesel machine onto your grass, tear open the earth, pull out the crushed pipe, and lay fresh stone. You are paying for a machine and a man in muddy boots with a shovel. That is the honest truth of homeownership. But if your pipes are sound and your tank is just struggling to keep up with a modern household, we are back to the real problem. We are back to the bleach. At the start of our time together, I asked you to think about a strange truth. Why do the big cleaning companies actually want you to ruin the bacteria in your tank? I don't know the men who sit in the corporate boardrooms, but I know the business of it. It is a very clever trap. The big chemical conglomerates sell you the heavy bleach and the thick blue fabric softeners. They market them to your family every single day, so your floors shine and your laundry smells like a mountain spring. They know those quaternary compounds suffocate the biomat. They know the broad-spectrum biocides strip your tank entirely bare. They sell you the poison. And then, when your drains start to smell sour and your toilets gurgle, you run back to the hardware store in a panic. You walk right down the plumbing aisle, just like my neighbor David did, and you buy a $20 cardboard box of freeze-dried enzymes to try and fix the damage. In many cases, the exact same massive corporate umbrella owns the brand making the bleach and the brand making the septic fix. They create the crisis in your yard, and then they sell you the cure on a monthly subscription. It is a closed circle. They are harvesting a crop of your hard-earned money, month after month, year after year. If you step out of that circle, you take your power back. You stop pouring the heavy biocides down the sink. You switch to plain white vinegar and hot water for your household scrubbing. You stop suffocating the tank with thick liquid softeners. And every few months, you spend $3 on baker's yeast and cornmeal to keep the living engine strong. You understand the biology under your grass, so you no longer have to fear it. Tell me in the comments, what is the single cleaning product you use the most of in your home? I read every single one. Next time, we are going to look at a simple Amish trick to block weeds in your garden forever without buying rolls of landscape fabric. Until then, take care of your land. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.